Hello, welcome to this video. Thanks for checking out my channel. My laptop camera is being weird this morning, so if I look like I have a pink astral background or filter on or something like that, I don't. It's my really old MacBook dying photo booth camera. So thank you for sitting with me through not so great quality film, but I was called to sit down this morning and talk a little bit about living in dark times and living honestly and looking for truth in a world full of lies. So thanks for joining. My name's Allie with Amory Speaks. If you're new, thank you for checking out my channel. If you're not new, thank you very much for returning to listen to me again. It's August 6th, 2026. I don't think I said that yet. And this is, it's going to be a bit of a morning ponderings type of video for me, to just kind of air out my own personal feelings and work through, like I mentioned, living through difficult times. It's not easy to be seeking, positive alignment, to be seeking service to the whole, to the others, and, working towards these corrective balances to put yourself in a positive directionality and have a positive abundance in your life, and to promote that kind of continuity. That in itself is a lot of work. And when we are attempting to do that kind of work in the world that it is sort of, we're told is the world around us, and we are really bombarded with what the world is, it's not really conducive to that kind of balancing work. So for myself, and if you're struggling with this kind of thing too, it's easy to fall victim to this sort of encouragement that the world around us tells us to just give up, that it's not worth it, that it doesn't make a difference, that it's just the way that it is. But there's something in the core of my being, in my heart and at the back of my mind always, that just says that's not true. It says there's a better way. It says good feelings feel too good to be fake. And also true goodness, true good feelings, the feeling of positive productivity, like I like to call it, it has such a real resonance, a quality to it that is enjoyable, that is long-lasting and memorable, like it's desirable. And so, I really feel like it's meant to be, and that we are meant to be in that kind of setting, whereas we're in this other kind of setting that's like, sorry, I had a bit of a dry spot on my lip. We're, this other setting that's like a literal prison planet. So to me, again, it's sort of gives itself away in its attempt to trick us, and then by giving itself away, it tells the truth on itself, and we have this double chance to recognize true truth and to go for real truth, or to not recognize the truth and to choose to be fooled and to choose to bend backwards over something that doesn't make sense. So having this kind of, cognitive discernment and a space of capacity for recognizing this choice point is to me really a pivotal place to stand on. It's going to be my home ground. It's, where every time that I've noticed I'm too close to something and I can't see clearly enough, and I'm going to be forced into these kind of bad choices because things seem so close in proximity, I can always remember to step back into this, space of discernment, this place of choice, and recall what it is that I'm seeking, because I think most of the time, the only time we kind of make bad choices or we bow down to negativity is when we feel backed into a corner, when we feel pressured into it, and we feel like we still will convince ourselves we're making the best choice that's possible at the moment, right? We're choosing the thing that is better for us at that moment. And that again, sort of in its pressure to make you make bad choices, it's whispering the truth back to you that you have the power of choice. And that is an infinite power. It doesn't mean it has to be subjugated into two avenues, or you're only seeing two avenues because you haven't pulled back enough to realize that there's still 360 choices to be made at every point. Now, of course, that's a metaphor. However, math and geometry and form reflect truth back at us in another way, in a different scene and scenario, but they're telling us the same thing. And if you can envision yourself as a beautiful circle and your system as a circle, it will recognize that promotion and vision, and it will create more choices. We are infinitely intelligent and designed an image of Creator, Source, God. We have unlimited power, and so of course we can jam ourselves down into a this or that position. But creativity, imagination, our heart center, can always, even spirit can speak through what you think you're seeing and say, wait, how about that other choice? What about this one? What about that? What about this that seems quite impossible? How about if that happened? And so again, this is like the truth of it telling us, well, we're choosing to jam ourselves between a this or that. There's plenty of different choices. And just in that space of reminding ourselves, it gives yourself more space. It gives yourself more chance to look again at what you think you're seeing. And instead of seeing what you want to see, or seeing what you think there is to be seen, or you're told there is to be seen even sometimes, we can observe the whole picture. And when you choose to observe a whole picture or image or place, instead of just looking at what we're looking to see, you see more. And it's just as plain as, say, go outside and look at a tree. When you look at whatever tree that's in front of you, or look at a plant, you can look at one of my plants, you might focus in on one thing when you first see it. If something catches your eye about it, whether it's the vase it's in, or the type of leaves it has, or if it's the branching, or a flower on it, or whatever is the case, right? Something, when you look initially at this other thing, catches your eye, this tree, you see the leaves first. You see all of how it's spread out, how tall it is, perhaps. Or even you walk up to it and you just look at the bark, or you just look down at the roots. Perhaps the roots are, something that draw your attention. If you're just choosing to look for that, if somebody has said to you beforehand, go outside and look at the roots of the tree, you're going to go out with instructions to just look at the roots. If someone says, go outside and look at the tree, you already might have something in your brain about what is, a preconceived notion or assumption of looking at the tree the way that you need to look at it. However, if you take a moment to then pull back and just observe the entire tree, you're going to notice different things than when you were told to just look at the roots, or if you're just staring at the bark, or if you just were, looking at all of the leaves and the height of the tree or something. As soon as you observe and look at everything else, well, the people looking at the leaves are going to notice the bark. The people who are looking at the roots notice the leaves. The people looking at the branches notice the roots. You might even walk around that tree instead of just looking at it from the front. You can totally move your body around the thing and get a different perspective, even of the same thing, even of those roots that you were told to look at, or even if you're just looking at the leaves, you're getting a different view by moving yourself around the object. That's observation. That's the practice and the work that I'm hoping to explain a little better. And to get us out of, because even if it's a choice point, even if it's scenarios, even if it's a sketch or a blueprint, or you're drawing out ideas for some kind of business plan, or an invention or anything like this, especially working with others, you can be told or shown these certain ways to look at a thing, but there's always other ways to look at something, and we can find out what those are by merely stepping back a bit and observing instead of forcing looking at something. And this is another way, to practice what kind of systems we're running, what kind of automatic interactions that we are using to pick up sensory information from the body. And then corresponding through the body into the mind and into spirit. Like, are we having full translations of what we're seeing and what we're observing, and making choices about what we think we're seeing, So, yeah, all these kinds of ways of stepping back from what we think we're told is the world really helps. It's really helping me to remember that what I'm told about this world isn't just what the world is. And of course, if we look at what we're told about the world and we go looking for those things in the world, we find them. And, just to kind of bring it back to the main point of what I clicked on the video for to talk about today, and although it's a little bit of kind of like a negative subject and a little bit of a downer, this is the silver lining, and this is the work that we're called to do when we're presented with such overwhelming evidence that the world is this way. Because we have a choice of what world we see. We have the choice every day of what world we choose to interact with and what we think reality is about. And what we think reality is about actually becomes what reality is about, right? So it's really important to step back and to start or keep going, even if it's not a starting, like even if it's something not new to you, like me, it's not new to me, but every day is new. Every actual moment in the ever-present present moment has a chance to become new. And we, as the observer and experiencer of moments, are the threshold of what we consider to be new and not new. And how we look at that and how we approach newness matters greatly, So it is, not to keep with my own personal honesty and assessments. I look out at the world, and, well, it depends on which world I'm looking at, of course. Because for example, if I look out at my world where I am, the natural world, I see great beauty. I see new, refreshing cycles, and forgive me, it's a very humid day, and I'm like, all of my joints are kind of like bothering me already this morning. And I can feel the humidity like creeping in. Distracted. Anyways, when I respond to the natural world around me and allow that to encourage and to tell me what the world's all about, I see really beautiful landscapes and life exploration in so many different forms, just in the plants, just in the flora and fauna, just a couple of different expressions of species in life that I will see around here, where I live in a wooded area in Northeast America, and I have 4 seasons, and there's like a lot of change and cyclic things and different times of activity of life that are doing different things. And it's, when I look at this kind of world, I see a wonderful chance of humanity to be stewards in this world and to be helpers and guiders and to be integral units within the whole, and to live within the whole true cycle of what nature teaches us. And for me, nature, I believe, is written and sponsored by God, and that it follows God's laws unimpeded and with no need of a question. And, we could say with no need of free will. People tend to think if there's no free will, that means slavery. I don't believe that whatsoever. You cannot enslave someone and force them to do something that they already are called to do and in fact enjoy and love to do. And it's their purpose to do it. It's like, where is the tag slave? Where is all of the things that come with this word slave in that picture? They don't exist. And in fact, the only place they could exist would be in the mind of that master. And so whoever would think they were a master over a slave, unbeknownst to them, have only enslaved themselves. Because the thing they think is their slave doing work that they have told them to do, or that they control or force them to do, there's no force, there's no control. They're doing it willingly, and in fact they would do it whether you, the master, had told them or were watching them or not. So and just like, people will sometimes say, well, plants can't think, animals don't think like humans think. There's this differentiation. Yes, of course. And it's not a bad thing. Actually, people will think like they lack intelligence, therefore. No, they just have a completely different version of intelligence. And bless them for that intelligence of non-questionability, because the beauty in their fluid growth and cycles, it's eternal, and it lives forever, and it takes care of itself, and it's symbiotic, and it's harmonious. This natural world, the potentials of being a tuned, on-key member of the symphony of that world is, I'm constantly reminded of that. And when I choose to look at the world, I choose to remember these things and enliven my world with this kind of idea. However, I will say, we can also look in a different angle and look out at the world, humans' created world of industry, and all we see is slave master cycles. But we have to then put into existence this idea of force, this idea of going against something, this idea of free will, this ideas of, doing things different. And when we see this, we've chosen this, so I'm not going to deliberate whether it's good or bad or it should have been a different way. I mean, it doesn't matter. It is the way it already is. So I'm going to take affinities, likes, and desires out of the picture and just say that when left to own devices with free will and polarities and duality and systematic exchanges on those spectrums, imbalances are, more popular than balancing. And lies become more promotable than truth. And manipulations, shadowed areas, darkness becomes, promoted over freedom, over light, over clarity and transparency. And when we look out in a world in that angle, under those lenses, it's a prison planet. And it's not a happy place. It doesn't sponsor happiness. It has a pay-for-play gambling app where they'll tell you you're buying your happiness on, or you can gamble for it. You might get it. But it's not eternal. It's not everlasting. And it's continuously going to need more. Now, this is opposite of, the world that we could choose to see if we were looking at natural states. But again, nobody, under this heading wants to remember that. It's kind of part of jumping into the carnival, walking underneath their banners, that you give up the right to talk about that kind of world. And, because they don't like that world. So this is the issue, with, like I was saying at the very start, living in dark times, living in a world full of lies, when you want to be honest and true, when you feel great truths, when you just want to serve the whole positively, you become the bad guy. You become the scapegoat, the black sheep. You are a tinfoil hat wearing crazy person who's got to live in the forest like some kind of mystic hermit that just is totally disconnected from what they call reality and society, and the times, and it's easy to become bitter. It's easy to feel affronted, or to get offensive or defensive even. Defensive or offensive, whatever, excuse me, but, either or. It's just like a lot of times too, there's people just stand at, and I do this myself sometimes, we stand at the fence of our beautiful, expansive world, with like a whole valley and mountains and beach and everything you could imagine, just there for the taking, and we know it's there, and you're on the side that's not gated in, but we stand at the fence at the gate of the crazy carnival show and just stare over there. Like, why are they all over there? Don't they know this is over here? And what we should recognize, and what I always try to tell myself when I find myself kind of on that fence, is like, you are inching and standing in as close in proximity to negativity as you can get without tipping your cup. And what you should know by that is that it's not that your cup isn't, your cup's close to full, and it's not that it's just one time and then it spills over, one thought, or that you could really notice that it's starting to spill over and then you can move away from the fence. What happens when we're close to the fence is that, little millidrops, little tiny, milliliters, and are being like little droppers, are just landing in flecks in your cup, just like the boil the boil the frog technique. You don't notice the gradualness of the heat. And it's by the time you notice that those little milliliters that's when the cup's already full over, and you've fallen through the fence, and you're stuck in negativity again, and you've jumped into the slave cycle again, and you've already allowed the master to sort of name claim over you, just by standing there for too long. We think, oh yeah, I've hopped over the fence. I know this already. I met the fence. I'm out there. I can't get back over the fence. I made that choice. Choices are every moment. Choices are infinite in their diversity and in their spectrum. And so, we've missed the fact that we think that only this, and this from this angle are going to pull me over the fence, or going to turn me negative, or going to imbalance my systems. As long as this, and that don't happen, and I watch it very carefully, I'm good. I can stand here and critique those people. I can stand here and cast shade at those people. I can stand here and righteously discern that they are doing something wrong and bad. I can yell at them. I can accuse them. This is it. This is the negative re-tricking us into thinking that we're doing something good by being negative. And they don't cross connect. They neutralize, and in fact, actually, it doesn't even like neutralize in a steady ratio. It's a great ratio where it's an imbalance all of a sudden, and you're out of balance all of a sudden. So being very mindful and trying to just not even be at that fence, and not even, especially not standing over the fence and attempting to correct or cast light in some kind of way to impede on the carnival show of the world, and force them to change in some kind of way. The best thing to do is to turn your back on the whole thing and to look full-faced into the natural world, into the light, into the sun, and to see what out there calls you, what is calling to you to be a part of, or to go adventure towards, or experience. Because there's always more. There's always a next for evolution and this sort of discovery of manyness. But we can divert ourselves from our true callings in natural organic world if we choose to, all times, anytime, any moment. And it doesn't really matter. It's not linear, and it's not really spatial in the way that we feel like it is. It's a lot different than that. So you could be off on the top of Mount Everest in your final climb of like doing a really great service for self, making it to this peak and a beautiful sunset, enjoying it. You're in this metaphor, you're 100,000 miles away from that fence and that whole carnival show. You haven't thought about it in 6 months while, for how long you packed your trip, and you were on it, and you're in this great lone place in the Himalayas meditating with monks, and you're on your peak, even there, I'll say it biblically, the devil presented himself where? To Jesus in the desert. He brought him to all of these places instantaneously. This is symbolically what happens when we're at these great places, when we're at these cusp moments. There comes the shadow. There comes this egregore. There comes the demon, the devil, whatever is at the placement of negative evolvement. They like an energy egregore, right? They have these certain points. They have this certain capacity at different stages, just like light does. And when capacities are met, there's challenges to be had. There's catalysts to be noticed. It's a test of what you will do at that moment. And so your peak moment on Everest, all of a sudden the memory of that fence there, all of a sudden something comes up, all of a sudden some chink, some weakness, some kind of disruption happens, and instantaneously you are back standing at that fence, staring at that carnival. Or worse than that, you're in the midst of it somewhere. and it doesn't matter how far away you think you got. It doesn't matter how long it's been, and it can instantaneously put you right back there. And that in itself can be quite frustrating, except if we remember that it's an illusion and it's a joke, and that space and linear movement, that experience and wisdom are not something that is measurable in that kind of sense. It's another trick to see if we've understood what is immeasurable, what really is true about a lemniscat movement, that it isn't ever not coming back to center. It isn't ever expanding out. It isn't ever not moving. And so we can always catch a ride back to center neutrality. We can always let go of our forced movements and ride the tide back home. Let it lead the way. And as soon as you remember that, you'll be rushed back. You'll be taken on the wind and fly to somewhere just as beautiful as that place you were taken from, or perhaps start at a whole new endeavor out there in that beautiful world. But again, it's the choice, it's the recognition, and it's what do we do when challenged? Do we revert down? Are we going to bend over backwards? Have we been sort of defeated by that? And if you allow it to be, then you are. And again, it's not like it's good or bad or right or wrong. There's not points being docked and moved around in that kind of sense. In fact, sometimes we learn more and we gain more after we trip and fall in that kind of way, after we get re-wrapped up into a thing, And so this is another reason why I think we don't ever need to fight that carnival crazy world. We don't ever need to try to banish it or exercise it or get it to be all light over there. Because, in fact, we would never be able to do the friction work. We would never be able to smooth out hard edges and find the beauty in the sculpture, in the clarity of it all, if we don't have hard edges to begin with. If there's not a gritty sandpaper, to uncomfortably grate against. So these are the kind of things that I try to uplift myself with and remind myself of in these kind of hard times, because if I don't have these kind of things to remind myself of, what else is there other than to bow down into their crazy carnival games? And for somebody like me, I just got very sick and tired of it. So yeah, that's my meaning to say, it's an awkward place to be at, and it can be lonely, it can be difficult. However, if you look at what everything else is, it doesn't matter which way you kind of look at it. Things are difficult no matter what. So it's kind of like, where and when do I want to meet difficulty? Do I just want to get through it as it presents itself? Or do I want to attempt to put it off and tell myself I'll meet that later? I'll be ready for that later. Because, sometimes we look at the carnival crazy world where they're over there giving out prizes, giving out easy life, vacations, like riches, attention, influence, lots of flashy different material items, prizes, and all this kind of stuff. The easy life, the good life. Well, tricking into what the good life is. And this is their way of putting the difficulty off to later. But we have to remember what they are thinking is difficult is much different than what a true, honest person calls difficult. Because if we're living in a positive alignment and we're seeking God's will for us, if we're seeking organic template, we're seeking our purpose on purpose to do what we're called to do for service for the whole, difficulties arise that we are meant to meet. Right? And this is even like, I'll go back to biblical scripture again and say that, God doesn't put anything in front of you that you're not ready for, that you cannot handle, right? This is in the trust of knowing that on the walk there is difficulties, but that the goal towards it is worth it, and that we are strong enough to meet them, or even if we all feel too weak to meet them, we can ask for help, and it will be given to us to meet those difficulties as they arise. If you know you've been given the two things, either you're strong enough or strong help will be given every time a difficulty comes up, why would you ever choose to put off a difficulty for later? There's nothing in those directions that say about putting it off for later, right? It says when you're met with it, it's meant for you. And whether your legs give out and you're too weak, call for help. And other than that, keep going. Right? It's the prize, the goal to be met is felt, is increased, is given by meeting that difficulty or by asking for the help in itself. And they sort of take care of each other. One meets each other right away. There isn't this time for later. This isn't this extended out there space where we just stuff stuff in a corner for later, and then later we'll get paid for it. It's a direct exchanges. Everything has to happen right away. Two things, give and receive, happen at the same moment. So if you think you've put something over to give later, or to receive now and give later, or give now and receive later, it doesn't happen like that. They're in tandem always. Just like with a problem is always the solution. You cannot have a problem without the solution being right there. What the Crazy Carnival show tells us is that that's not true, and that it is very much linear and it takes time, and that over here we give prizes first and difficulty comes later, or we give prizes to help with difficulties that will come later, or whatever. And to them, their difficulty is ultimate judgment. Their difficulty is the end. They're meeting their end. That's everything gets piled into the same word and the same box. That is, deal with it later. When I expire, I will be confronted with judgment. I will run from it until the very last moment, just to put everything off. And they don't remember or choose to forget completely about the rules, about the two notions of given, that everyth's meant for you, what will come to you is meant for you, and that every difficulty you're strong enough to meet. There's a strength in that notion, in those truths. There's just weakness and frailty and incapacity, sort of, in their ideas and in their promises. And they want to put their difficulties off forever, or at least till the end of their game, and then they'll cry victim about it. So anyway. I'm like feeling called to just say finally, and this is the last thing I'm going to mention. Hopefully it doesn't take me into tangents, but it's like we have to remember that the very first law, the very first commandment, is broken by negative alignment. This is the first step, and it's the foundational step into anything and everything that coagulates negatively. If you don't want to coagulate into negativity, you don't want to fuel and feed those potentials, All we have to do is stay open, awake, and alive to the very first commandment, to the very first truth, and the very first step, and to always be course correcting, reminding yourself of it, and living in that very first truth. And what is the very first truth? Of course, go over it one more time. Everything's on purpose with purpose. Great infinite creator consciousness, God Father, Mother, whatever you want to look at as the creator of this experience and of all of us, to trust and love that creation with all of your heart, mind, and soul. To know with all of your heart, mind, and soul that it was created on purpose with purpose. If we know that it was benevolently created by a loving creator who has a purpose and it's living its purpose, where do we find questions? You know, how do we have an argument? How do we have a state of not wanting to meet some kind of disruption, of not wanting to solve an issue, of not wanting to meet whatever is in front of us, you know, at that given moment? So yeah, that's it for me today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.